Hello Targar friends, hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for another Orc Mode workout, and today was max effort squat day. You guys know the rules though. For those of you who watch these videos, please click like down below. Yesterday is the first day in an entire week in which we have kept the likes like 6 higher than the dislikes. So please continue that trend, click like down below, and let's get on to some PRs. Now, a lot of people noted already, wow, that box is deep. That's actually only 1 inch deeper than I normally do. I have 11 of those squares. They're 1 inch tall. I have measured a 12-inch tall stack of them, and it was exactly 12 inches on the dot before. So we're at 11. Now people are going to go, why? Why the deeper? Well, because I need to focus on squatting deeper, right? When I've been hitting my other PRs, when I removed the box, I've hit some really big PRs. Some of them are questionable depth, okay? I need to build that strength mobility at that point. And when we go that inch deeper on the box, it gets hard. Like 502 was hard. And we've seen me do 502 on the box. We've seen me do 502 against pretty hefty bands and chains, 50 plus pounds, at 12 inches. Okay, now I'm going to spend some time building off this 11-inch box. I think this is what I need to do, and it's multiple reasons for it. Number one, a lot of people say, Jason, that stance you use is really wide. When I've been doing my squats, I laugh because that, to me, that's a narrow stance, right? My 552 squat, which most of you guys can see over at my front of my page, is up there as the main video, right? To me, that's a narrow stance. That's not a wide stance. It's not even remotely wide for powerlifting. It's just a normal Olympic squat, right? I'm just doing a normal high bar squat. With my hip structure, I can go deeper with wide stance. So the problem I have is that when you guys saw my pause squats the other day, I use that same stance, right? When I pause, people are questioning my depth. Okay, if I can pause with over 400 pounds on my back at a point, that's my range of motion. I can't go deeper than that, and it's because of my hips. And what I do is that I picked that stance because it limits my range of motion, and I was hoping to be right at meet legal, and then I have a hard stop so I can bounce out of it faster. I need to work with a slightly wider stance. The box squats let me do that. It lets me practice the wider stance, and I can go deeper. And what I need to do is practice that wide stance and get used to going a couple inches below parallel. That box squat, I would have to measure it, is somewhere between 2 to 3 inches. Probably not 3, I'd need to check. It's 2 inches or so below parallel. I need to practice exploding from that point. Okay, I also need to practice the stance width involved to get to that range of motion. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to build up off an inch deeper box now than I used to use. And when I start hitting those same lifts again, that means that we'll be just as strong on the back squat an inch deeper. Okay. So take home here. When I can start replicating my best box squats from the 12-inch box at the 11-inch box and get real strong, I can pull the box back out. I'll be able to use that stance width and that depth to start hitting 550 plus again on a back squat. All right, so that's going to be the game plan. Now, I've reincorporated the good mornings, as I said. We need the good mornings. I need them for my deadlift. I need them for my squat. Today, this is technically for 20 rep sets of PR because I added 5 pounds. See the little green plates? We added 5 pounds. Yes, this is going to be a very long video. I did a lot of reps today. Everyone's going to be like, Jason, everything's 15 to 20. What are you, bodybuilding, bro? Any of this look like bodybuilding to you? High volume training is more of my lower body stuff. I'm hitting maxes. So the beauty of 1 rep max training is that I hit and fatigue the highest upper threshold motor units. Okay, when you get close to failure or you reach failure with the really high reps, we're going to hit those motor units again that have been fatigued. I would never tell you guys to come and do legs with nothing but 15 and 20 rep sets. I wouldn't tell you to do that. I've already hit a 1 rep max. We've achieved the maximum possible highest tension already. Okay. I've already hit the ultra upper threshold fibers that we get from ultra low rep training, but I did it better than you'd get off doing triples or 5s because we did it a max. I can re-fatigue that with the volume, but then I'm also getting a whole spectrum of hypertrophy. Also, using exercises that lend themselves to these, I can do very large amounts of volume and recover. When we can do very high volume fatiguing training and recover from it, we grow. Exercise selection is key, and I think that's what people need to grasp. I don't worry about, oh man, he's not doing the biggest, heaviest, brutal lifts afterwards, because I do that at the start of every workout. We're already covered. We've hit peak tension. Now we worry about stimulus to fatigue. Okay, and this is one reason the good morning shines, which I've covered for you guys. So I did a little 5-pound PR for 5x20, and I can tell you I was lit up. Rectors, hamstrings, everything. So now that we're doing it again, I think we can expect my deadlift to start climbing again. Also, as someone else pointed out, maybe the box squats for volume the other day probably impacted my recovery, probably. But we want to address every facet of this. We don't leave anything unturned. So I've got to hypertrophy all this stuff. Now the beauty of this is that I do hit belt squats and the good mornings both after. Okay, my legs are crushed. And again, let's come over to the point. This is not the same as just doing what you would think of as normal fluff and pump. We're keeping very specific lifts in here. We're looking at stimulus to fatigue, and we're still hitting the highest threshold fibers first. Okay, people have to understand, when you do a 1 rep max before these other movements, it changes the total training stimulus of your workout. Okay, and we have to understand that. It's not the same as just coming in and doing some sets of 20 by themselves. And for people who question that, they might want to look at my legs and back that I train this way all the time, and then look at my squat and my deadlift. It's very obviously creating functional hypertrophy because my big lifts keep going up. My squats and deadlifts have gone up. And we're going to see it all again now that we're being more selective of this. We're addressing weak points more carefully. I'm going to bring that squat up, and those deeper box squats, just like I did before with the 12-inch, are going to build that squat. And we're going to build the stances that I want, build the musculature that I want. Again, I'm going to push the good mornings ultra hard, because notice when I started doing the higher and higher rep good mornings, my deadlift started climbing. 3 weeks without doing them, and I had a little stall, a little hiccup. After a couple of PRs in a row, 605, then 615, we're going to keep pushing them. And I'm going to get stronger and stronger at these 20 rep sets. Right? Where's my deadlift going to be when I can do another 10, 15 pounds for 5x20 with this range of motion? It's going to go up. And it's going to improve my squatting too. Now, let's come over to the other point. The hip belt squats. Sweet Jesus. My God, were my quads lit up today. I went ahead and did my other method where I don't do the dead stop, where I pull them on a very short chain so that they're right at the edge of the rings on my spud belt. Now, some of these people will say, well, maybe you didn't get as full a range of motion. Well, I tried to every rep, trying to go deep, trying to build the quads through that deepest part of the range of motion. Now, some of them I may not, but it's hard to tell. This angle makes things difficult. This angle does make things difficult. But we can look at the angle of boxes and other stuff. And I felt like the pretty good majority of them I got depth. Some of it, though, maybe I don't, because I'm starting to get fatigued. And each one of these sets, the first 5 reps feels easy. It's like, this isn't going to be challenging. By around rep 12, my legs are usually shaking. My quads are so pumped on these that they hurt. Like my quads, especially because of that wider stance and then going deep. And by the way, the data at this point, I've had to retract that. The data proves that wide stance squats do not work the quads even 1% less. Not at all. That's a total myth. Athlete X is wrong. The researchers in the field have debunked that. So even he's wrong on that. I'm wrong on it previously. We've all been debunked by people whose actual advanced degrees are in the specific fields involved, who studied it. And they say, no, it does not. It just uses more muscles with the quad. Quads work still at the same rate. So I felt them. But the difference is, what are we doing? We're training a wide stance, going deep. We're doing so in a way that puts traction on me instead of compression. There is zero axial loading here. Now, I want to address this. I heard the other day in his leg video, I did hear, because I did talk about it, Alpha Destiny did say that these are a potential restoration lift. I don't know that I believe that. I do understand where he's coming from. I do understand why he might think that. It's not completely unreasonable. I debate it because you're not in true traction. Just because the weight's around your waist doesn't mean your spine is in true traction, because it's not pulling on you, right? You're not hanging from something or supported. Now, the reverse hyper is, and I use that every day. But as far as the effect goes, this is much, much easier to recover from than any form of other squat. It's easier to recover from than a machine squat. Easier to recover from than a step up. Why? Because all the weight's in traction around our waist. We have not one drop of axial loading. And we're doing the same position we would do on a wide stance, full powerlifter type squat. It will build the musculature of that squat. Now, it's not building the musculature of your back, but we do good mornings, we do reverse hypers, we do rows. But this, again, learning to balance, learning to sit back into that deep stance. Okay, we're getting into definitely a power stance here. And my quads were basically destroyed. I was struggling to walk after each set, even with a light weight. Now, will I focus on getting stronger on it? Sure. Will I focus on adding more weight? This final set, that's where a lot of them, they're maybe not as deep, because it's just my quads are dying. And then when I get to maybe the very end, I'm like, okay, I got a few more reps. Let me try to sink it, because I was just on fire. Now those, I'm hitting it, right? The last, some of those, I was just destroyed. You can even see the pump in my quads. Okay, they're lit up. I'm going to make sure my quads grow enough to fix that weak link on the pause squat. Hey, because if it's a weak link on the pause squat, what is it? It's going to be a weak link when we get to a 1 rep max squat, even with a stretch reflex. Got to make sure I blast through that sticking point. All the other stuff will help me after the sticking point. Obviously, the glutes and the hips and the hamstrings. And thick enough hamstrings will help me bounce out of the bottom. But we've got to have enough quad to drive through the sticking point, so we can get to the point where we can activate the glutes and the hips more, where we have the external rotation of the hip. Okay, I will get to that 600 squat this year, but I'm going to have to dig deep. People saying, well, keep doing what was working. What was working was always attacking weak points with 100% veracity. That's what was working. Okay, people lose sight of that. The strategy was never just do these exercises. The strategy was put most of your efforts into your weakest links as they appear. I am literally doing exactly what was working. Exactly what was working. I didn't change anything. And I think that's where people get thrown off. Do what works for you. Well, no. What worked for you was fixing weak links. That's what works for everybody, not a specific exercise. Okay, because if you're doing a specific exercise to fix a weak link and it's no longer a weak link and you focus on just that exercise, you're no longer doing what works. Does that make sense? So the rows, I'm going to admit, my posterior chain, after doing the 5x20 good mornings with a new weight, even at 5 pounds, my hamstrings hurt really bad trying to do these. I think on the 4th set, I struggled. That might be this one. And people are like, oh man, you have to adjust and re-grip. No, I just couldn't find a comfortable grip with. And my hamstrings were hurting. They're hurting all the way through. Because again, that extra work. But I feel like in terms of just leg stimulation today, my hamstrings, my quads, was pretty intense. Pretty good. And that's what we have to do. Like I'm saying so because, I mean, there is definitely some discomfort, but I don't want it to sound like it's crippling. But, I mean, it was one hell of a pump. And again, we keep addressing the weak links with the volume. And we do it with the volume that we can handle, we can recover from. We pick lifts that allow us to do an enormous amount of volume and recover. And I will build the volume on those hip squats. I did 3 sets today. I want to eventually get to where I can do 5 sets. Again, keep the quads growing and get them strong into that deep position. Right, we've got to get them strong out of the bottom of the squat. Use the box squat to get used to getting that deep and then exploding. It's a combination. Then obviously we use all the other stuff to build the posterior chain. Hamstrings, glute ham raises, reverse hypers. And all this also obviously carries over to my deadlift. With curls, I only did 4 sets today. We'll say why. Because by the end of the 4th set, my biceps hurt. They hurt. And it's just a case of they're working hard now. This is definitely working them hard. I felt like at that point they were so fatigued that another set, it felt like it would just be a junk set. Right, because I basically went to failure on 4 sets. I don't know, all somewhere in the 15 to 18 rep range. But the last one, I almost had like a lancing pain through that left bicep, that one with the old scar tissue the most in it. And it was just like, okay, I'm done. I feel like if I tried to do another set, it just wouldn't be quality. I felt like I'd got all that my biceps had. Keep in mind, I do this every 48 hours, and I always do a bunch of rows first. I'm doing a lot of rowing volume first. So by the time I get to these, I mean, the biceps are already partially worked. They're already very warmed up. And these just kind of hammer them. And I feel like they're growing. Honestly, I don't know if you guys can tell when I do any of the sitting down videos or anything else. I don't know. I almost feel like they're getting bigger. Maybe it's my imagination. But, you know, again, it's beneficial to us for both the deadlift and the bench press to do that. And I'm trying to focus more on getting to the bottom. Occasionally, I feel like I short stroke the lockout. Even though we could say, well, it's on chain, so there's a little less weight, it might not matter. What matters for purposes of tendons? It matters for purpose of strengthening the bottom for the deadlift. Okay, so we do want to get it. Probably doesn't matter for the bench because we're just trying to build a bigger bicep to get a little bit of spring effect out of the bottom and give us a little more of a dynamic stabilizer. But the point still holds. It's a good idea to go all the way down. And, you know, I see a lot of guys, bodybuilders, who do that. They don't go all the way down on biceps and stuff, and then they wonder why they get injured easier later. Well, probably tell you why. You guys put so much focus into a muscle that you don't bother to even build the tendons on or do the full range of motion, predisposing yourself to injuries. But very, very, very happy with this training session. I feel like I got a lot done. It was productive. It's moving towards fixing everything that I want to do towards my goals. It was a lot of work. It was challenging. So I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.